right. Should we try to get started? You guys can hear me okay? No? Yeah? Good? Okay, if I get too loud, you let me know. Well, thank you very much for coming. I will try my very best to make a very boring topic as entertaining as possible, but I'm a software engineer, so I'm not sure how good that will work out. But just to get the plot running, I would like to see if you hand signs. Who of you guys already has Hadoop in production? 1, 2, 3. Who plans to put it in production? Okay, a few. Who does not know what Hadoop is? Oh, it's the wrong okay, no. All right. Come in. So we can do this interactive. If you have a question, if you want to interrupt me, that is totally okay with me. I work in a startup. People constantly interrupt my workday and my life. So I think you guys should use those microphones. But my intention really is to answer all your questions. And I'm sure this is the most non-technical session all of the day. But if you guys want to talk about garbage collection in Hadoop and why that really is a problem with Zookeeper, we can talk about this too. But what I want to talk today is ROI, return of investment for big data analytics on Hadoop. So what qualifies me to talk about this? Because I go drinking with a lot of nerds. No, this is actually a picture of the very first Nudge meetup that we did in, I think, 2005. So I started contributing to Nudge in 2003. It was three guys, basically. And since then, I built big data platforms. I'm more on the engineering side. And more, they put me into suits. And it's like, OK, you have to be the architect. OK, now you have to run the whole project. Build a few platforms for a company in Cupertino, a small startup. And for a big telco and for a music company. And I just want to share lessons learned because of all this cool technology that we all love because it's this new shiny toy. We have to justify it to our boss, right? So in concrete, we will talk a little bit about a framework that we put together to really understand what does Hadoop cost, what are all the moving parts. And then we will talk about the return of investment. Because if you're serious about this, you really need to get the big picture, right? Hadoop isn't as open source, cost efficient as you maybe think. And if you think you can replace your very nice Oracle environment with a very cheap Hadoop, let's do the math, right? So again, I will share some experience here. Hadoop has huge opportunity to make you the big data hero, but you need to use it in the right way, and you really need to think about all the moving pieces. So the reason we put this together is, so first of all, you can sell it to your boss, but also really to bring you forward, right? The idea is that you have a tool and maybe some thoughts around this that you maybe, even if you're an engineer, can establish yourself as the big picture guy. So the framework is very simple, right? So we have the total cost of ownership. So what is Hadoop actually costing? Minus the business benefits, and if we're lucky, we get some return of investment. But so I implemented myself, I would say 15 big data projects as kind of an engineer architect. My company, DataMia, we're looking at hundreds now, and so it's in the 3 digits of big data projects. And there's a lot that can go wrong. And if you really the big data hero or the change agent in your organization, I want to push that. Again, I want to share some battle scars. Luckily, I always worked as consultant, so I never lost my job. I just went to the next client. But maybe you want to be sensitive of a few things. So in the total cost of ownership, we will look at hardware, we look at software, we look at the whole integration, the people, operation, and we will look at the logistics. And there are some really awesome business benefits you can take away that you couldn't do with the traditional infrastructure you have. So for example, we helped a credit card company to identify more than $2 billion in fraud. Unfortunately, they didn't pay us in percent. So if not, I would be sailing with Larry somewhere, right, I guess. But another common use case is improved marketing, really understanding your customers, improving your funnels, increasing sales, understand how people using your product, really getting an idea of what is the usage, where are people dropping out. We have I think it's the second biggest Facebook game, running more than 1,000 reports a day against the log files to completely, constantly improving the product. And they basically started with $0 revenue and are now in the 3-digit $1 million revenue. I still don't know what online games sell, but that's okay. Anybody plays online games? No, you're all too busy. Okay, good. And then, we see more and more data being the new product as well. We see companies that start building offers where they sell data. You heard that quote before, data is the new oil. And the beauty is that the new oil source is in your company. Right, so keep thinking about this as well. And sometimes, only sometimes you can lower your IT expenses. But if you go into a big data project and say, geez, Oracle is so expensive. Again, let's do the math, if that's really helpful. It's really necessary that we think about where's our greenfield opportunity, where can we do new things with the new technology, and we can talk a little bit about applying old processes with the new technology, but I will show you in the numbers that this fails very, very quickly, and I just want to warn you. So anyhow, this is where we get the return of investment, where we actually maybe save money or can make money. More important though, we might have flexibility and time that we can bring to organization, because the new currency is time in organizations. Everything else, all your competitors have. They have at least as much money, they can outsource as much IT as they want, they have cloud services, all that good stuff. Agility, flexibility is the competitive advantage you need today in the market because it's moving that fast. Is it so far making sense? You guys can still hear me? Should we get more coffee? All right. You let me know, right? If it's getting boring, you just give me feedback. Just don't throw things. The Justin Bieber concert is tonight, I heard. So, anyhow, so let's look a little bit at the hardware, right? So the first thing is really, if you start your big data project, is to, actually the very first thing is to come up with a use case. If you don't have a use case, don't even start. And you will laugh, but I go on a regular basis in very big companies, very big banks, and they say, well, we want to do this big data Hadoop thing. We heard it's really cool. I read it actually in the airplane in the magazine, literally. We need to figure this out. And then they bring this whole Hadoop thing in, and they spend millions of dollars, 2 years in a lab environment, and then so what the hell we do with this? So first, you want to identify your use case. And I can help you with this, and we can talk about this in detail. I showed you a few: fraud identification, cybersecurity, funnel optimization, marketing segmentation, all that good stuff. But first you have to start with an idea. Don't start with the technology. Technology doesn't matter. I'm an engineer. I wrote significant parts of the code base for this whole thing. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter, right? You can build a $100 billion IPO company on PHP. Called Facebook. So, if you know what you want to do, then the very next thing is you can think about how much data does this specific project generate or I need to process, right? And based on that, you can guesstimate the amount of hardware you need in that whole project. The beauty with Hadoop, it's like shake and bake cooking, right? You just add more hardware or add more water. So please start small. If you go to your CIO and say, this is a great idea, need a 1 petabyte Hadoop cluster, not very positive for your career. But start with a 10-node machine, maybe even start in the cloud to prove the value, and then move on from there, expand. That's the beauty, just add more hardware. But not just, don't fit it too closely. You actually want to leave a little bit of headroom, because if you're successful, you will see the whole thing growing very quickly again. If you leave at least 50% or maybe even 100% headroom, to the amount of data you guesstimate for your first use case. I think that's a good thing. The next question you have to ask yourself, is it an I/O or CPU intense use case? So let me give you an example. If your use case is just collecting a bunch of web logs and then just understand how people moving in your, maybe online software you're offering or something like that, that's more storage intense. If you actually want to do predictive data mining, machine learning stuff, this will be more CPU intense. And it's just something you have to keep in mind. But if you're using Hadoop, you do not need memory intense. I mean, it's a hype right now, right? Everybody wants to do some memory, but to be honest, we're not really there. We don't see really in-memory stuff being successful, and by the way, it's very expensive. Anybody here bought a SAP HANA yet? Okay, you cannot buy it with a credit card, just as a information. The hardware, the CPU-intensive hardware is the memory-intensive hardware is very, very expensive, so be careful. The beauty of Hadoop, it is highly optimized for sequential data access. That means as the disk starts spinning, they position the reading head once, like the old long player vinyl record thing, and then they read all the data all the way through. The beauty of that is in the last 2 decades, the RPM speed of the hard drive significantly increased. On the other hand side, you have the old traditional databases, the oracles and so on, and they're working on a sequential data access where they actually have to move the reading head on the hard drive for every single record they're reading. Unfortunately, that didn't increase in the last 20 years that much. It's still 8 milliseconds. So now if you have to read 100, 200 billion records multiplied by 8 milliseconds, that's a few years, right? So you have to get the very expensive RAID systems, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, again, the beauty here, it's sequential access. We stream straight out of the hard drive into the CPU, so you do not need memory for the Hadoop clusters for the data processing. A little bit memory for the GVM, the operation system, and some stuff you stream through. But again, it's highly optimized from disk to CPU and back to disk. And that gives, by the way, Hadoop the speed that we see, but only for analytical workloads, for full table scans, for joins, for all that good stuff. If you want to do something else, stay maybe with something else. So I see this every month. I see people want to start a 10-node Hadoop cluster project, and then they say, well, first we have to evaluate the hardware vendors. And then they go out and spend 6 months evaluating HP versus Dell versus IBM versus Microsystems versus, do you guys come up with more names? Doesn't matter. Hardware, really, pick your vendor. They're all within the same thing. Don't spend money and time on trying to over-optimize. If you have a 10-node Hadoop cluster, if you need 10% more performance that you will not get in a difference between HP or IBM or Dell hardware, you will not get 10% difference in performance, you just buy another machine. And the machine is $2,500. But hey, I hope your salary per month is not $2,500. At least the people we hire is not $2,500. So think in that context, right? So don't overestimate in this. So what you want is a queen and a worker and a bunch of workers. Hadoop calls them master and slaves. I think that's not politically correct. And if you go into the mailing list, you will actually find that I argued 7 years ago that we should call those things differently. So anyhow, important here is that you have actually one queen, and then they call it a secondary master. So the second queen, it's actually not true. It's not the second queen. Well, first of all, there can only be one, right? But it's actually a compaction server that does some services for the queen. So when Hadoop actually does crash, it can start up again. Those 2 servers should be good hardware. What I mean with good hardware, they should have RAID, they should have dual network, dual power, all the good stuff. So here you spend a little bit more. But the workers are basically just a bunch of disks and a CPU. Cheap hardware, very cheap hardware. And most likely you need a head node. Head node means this is where you install the application you write, maybe the application you buy, So you can buy our application, run it there, those kind of things. You definitely need one server that kind of orchestrates. Sometimes I call this guy the conductor, the whole Hadoop cluster. And then, you will laugh, but you have to pay, you have to buy Rails, you maybe have to rent racks, you have to get a network. And here's where you also don't want to save money, right? Because Hadoop is a distributed environment, all the machines talk to each other. And we had situations, I had a customer in 2007, and he bought this really nice, shiny Mac Apple servers. They're looking really cool. And the LEDs, really fun to look at. Really fancy hardware, and then he took the cheapest possible network switch he could find. Wrong idea, right? Again, sequential data access, a lot of data going to the network, and if you have multiple racks, you actually want to have a full 10 gig link there. Very, very important. Also, be careful how you set up your network. We had situations where, in the really fancy network switches, you can actually throttle the different servers so that they don't make too much traffic. And we had very smart network admins that actually did this. This is, of course, you put the handbrake on Hadoop, right? And then one other funny event, we had one network admin that sent all the traffic between the Hadoop nodes to a firewall that happened to be in a different data center. Bad idea, too. Okay, some technical, yeah. It was fun to find out, though. It went all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast and back to filter every package. Don't forget the cables. And you know what? More than once, we bought hardware, we brought it into the data center, and you have this wonderful high density, one use, and we try to, one rack, we get like 20 or more on those. There's actually weight limitations in a lot of data centers, so you have to think about this, right? So if you budget your whole thing and say, okay, well, I need 80 servers, and I put them in whatever, 2 racks, check the weight. And by the way, check the power and check the cooling as well, because you there with like 40 boxes, you want to screw them in, and the data center says, well, I guess your price just doubled. So keep that in mind. Just again, these are the little things, right? If you plan this, if you actually have to rent 6 racks instead of 3, it's getting more expensive. All right, software. We do need an operation system. I did hear rumors that Hadoop now runs on other operation systems than Unix. Or Linux, should I say. Unfortunately, Solaris isn't there anymore, or not really. Larry got it all. So, yeah, I mean, if you can run Hadoop on Microsoft now. Any Microsoft people here? Okay. Let's make sure I don't make the wrong jokes. Any Oracle people here? IBM, HP, Dell? Okay, no, I will not. Okay. Anyhow, so, Unix is the most reliable, right? But hey, most likely you will have to pay for that. It's most likely Red Hat, SUSE, or something that your company already have. Ubuntu, Debian, that all works. But you want to consider to get, again, it's your choice or your company's choice to get a support system there. So you have the operation system. You need a Hadoop. Well, there's a lot of choices. It's actually amazing how many choices you now have. You can go to Cloudera, Hortonworks, MapR, Oracle, IBM, Dell, NetApp, who I'm forgetting. Intel. Hey, Intel. I might not yet use Intel. Personal experience. It's really cool. It's getting in the right direction because it has awesome security. But we need to. I'm not sure. Yeah, we have to. It's very new. But having encryption that low on the CPU is awesome. I love it. Are you working at Intel? But worth to evaluate. So, the problem though, again, is that what we see is people start with a 10-node Hadoop cluster and they spend 4 months or 5 months evaluating the different Hadoop distributions. Let me tell you, it doesn't matter. You have to be careful that you use HDFS file system and the standard MapReduce API. Don't get the vendor login we talked about all day, and then it doesn't matter. They have nice features like snapshotting with MapR, and Cloudera has this, and they're really big, and Hortonworks is all up. It's all great. Pick, and it's like G2E. If you use the standard APIs, you can switch. Because we do see people spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in time, and with like 5 people evaluating over 6 months Hadoop. It's not worth it. Use the open source one and then see what the best contract you get and where you get the most comfortable feeling with. Again, we see projects spending more time in evaluating than actually the whole thing is worth. And then you need monitoring. That's definitely something you have to consider. There are some open source tools, but there are also some commercial tools. It depends on your organizational kind of, are you logged in with HP for monitoring, or are you doing the Spring Source stuff? That's your choice. And then if you have this, you have the basics, but a lot of customers ask, what's with disaster recovery? To illustrate what you need to do with disaster recovery, I pirate copied from YouTube a little sequence from one of my favorite childhood movies. It's Judy Foster, First Contact. You guys remember that movie? All right, here's my favorite sequence. I hope you can hear it.
First rule in government spending. Why build one when you can have 2 twice the price?
So the simplest way to do disaster recovering is have 2 Hadoop environments, right? Don't start buying network attached storage to back up all the data. I mean, we could argue, do you even need disaster recovering, because Hadoop by default does 3 replications, and if you choose to, you can increase that to 6 or to 9, by the way, or 25. And by the way, yes, I did have a customer that had 2 different file systems, one HDFS and I think it was KFS, and he had 3 copies of the data on both of them. They had a lot of venture capital funding for a very short time. So the easiest way is really replicating your environment. And it's pretty straightforward. Again, the whole Hadoop environment. I mean, look, you spend less than 100K on a Hadoop environment, so just buy 2 of those, right? Have 2 separated clusters. If you really have operational workloads on those, you might want to consider to put them in different data centers. In theory, you can also configure Hadoop that you have 1 Hadoop cluster spanning over multiple environments, but that will get very fast, complex, and expensive, but you actually can do that. So again, disaster recovery, just buy 2 and keep them synced. Now here's the biggest expense in your whole Hadoop project, and that's good, because it's about us. It's people. It's actually really interesting if a lot of big data projects start off out of IT, where you have, one guy that really want to push it, and he said, it's just 100K or maybe 50K for the Hadoop cluster. It's super, super cheap. But hey, you know what? You need a lot of people to make it work. So here are the kind of people that we saw always in projects, and we always see them. Because if you want to roll this thing in production, you first need the guy that signs the check. And his time is very valuable, by the way. And he's doing more than signing the check. He will sit with you in 10 meetings and then ask again, what does MapReduce again? And anyhow, so very, very expensive. You definitely need a guy that runs your project. As soon you're really building applications on top of that, you need someone that at least administrates your Jira, is kind of the IT manager. You need a hardware guy. Don't underestimate that. I saw projects, this is all super, we just do this in software development, and now we bought 40 machines, and now the IT guys say, what, are you crazy? We're not putting this in the data center for you. It's IBM hardware. We only have HP hardware certified for you. So get this guy definitely involved. You need a network guy. Right, again, tell him to not throttle the machines and do no package filtering, but his guy, again, will be needed. You need the data owners. A few guys smiling, but seriously, I went into projects, I had this great idea of putting the marketing and the sales data together and the credit card data, boom, this is awesome, and then we can really segment our customers, blah, blah, blah. And then the guy that owns the credit card data said, no, you can't have this data. There's this legal requirement and that legal requirement and da-da-da-da-da. So get the data owner involved, and you will have to work with them very, very early. And not just for legal reasons, but also for logistical reasons. Some Oracle admins do not like if you have a 10-node Hadoop cluster in parallel downloading data out of that single node Oracle, because they consider the distributed denial of service attack. So you have to talk to them. Is it, do we pull? Are you pushing to me? All those kind of things make your environment more complex and more expensive, because if you have kind of a push, you have to have another server in the middle for the handshake, okay? You will have Unix admins, and you will have to get people that administrate your environment, and you will have to train them. You will have the security guy. It's usually that bearded guy. I saw a few people here running around with sunglasses, something security. You need that guy for sure, right? Because especially as you start analyzing customer data or anything like this, there are some firewalls and stuff you have to set up in Hadoop. Hadoop itself is not secure. Also, if you integrate it in Kerberos and maybe have LDAP and Active Directory as authentication, it is not secure. Soon someone can SSH into those machines, hell breaks loose. They can delete data, they can manipulate data, they can get it out. I mean, yes, they need to SSH into the machines, but I can guarantee you, if you're new to Hadoop, you will set up the same username and password for all of the 10 different machines. Well, not you, but the admin that didn't do his job, right? So security guy to integrate this, to really isolate the whole thing and have a security concept, who can run, what is running, all this kind of stuff. And then you need the operation, the monitoring guys. And this is your best friend, by the way. Get him, take him out for drinks on a regular basis, because this guy will get the phone call if the whole thing is down, right? So that's the people you really need. You need the analyst, the guy that actually really uses the data. You need the subject matter expert, right? Unfortunately, sometimes we have kind of the marketing user that then tells the IT analyst what to do. So you double your cost there. And if you decide to build your own analytical environment on top, maybe with something like Pick or MapReduce or Cascading or Hive, and I would argue that will get very, very expensive, because you need a bunch of software developers. In Silicon Valley, a software developer that knows Hadoop at this point, any software developers that do Hadoop jobs, 1, 2, 3, how much you make per year? No, I'm kidding. So what I'm seeing, and maybe that's a benchmark for you, fully loaded Hadoop experienced engineer goes for $200K in Silicon Valley. $200,000. When it was Nudge and Hadoop in 2005, I didn't make $200,000, I wish, but that's what you have to pay, fully onboarded. So that will be your biggest expense. And then you need to have QA engineers and much more. So just to give you an idea, again, I just told you Hadoop engineers, $200K here. But just to give you an idea, you guys from the West Coast? Hands up, West Coast. All right, East Coast, Asia Pacific. Cool. Hey, Europe. 1, 2. I'm from Germany, but I live in the West Coast. So, okay, I only have Bay Area and West Coast, just to give you an idea. System administrator, $117,000 in the Bay Area. A little cheaper New York, interesting, right? Network administrator, $119,000. Database admin, $125,000. Security manager, $116,000. Business intelligence analyst, $137,000. West Coast, right? Data scientist, $138,000. I think they go for much more. This is a study, by the way. Oh, that's funny. I want to make a picture of you making pictures of the salaries. Hang on. Oh, show me your smartphones. That's funny. I want to do that. This was my slide, and it showed the salaries. And then, so yeah, if you're a data scientist, I think you can ask definitely more. I saw a data scientist straight out of Stanford. They want to have $210K. Like, what? How old are you? Oh, I'm in California. I'm not allowed to ask you how old you are. Okay, in Germany you're allowed. Java developer, QA engineer. So putting this all together gets you per year on one dot almost $2 million. 1.15. Okay, and I didn't even count that you actually will need at least 5 Java engineers to make this all happen, because there's no import tools for Hadoop that work reasonable. You have to use Scoop, you have to write code. There are no real BI tools, beside Datamere, that working on Hadoop. You have to code all this. You need 5 engineers at least for a year, and I can tell you, because I did it for years and I made good money with my team, that run this. So, and this is just one person. So if you just have one software engineer, so you're looking at almost $2 million to get Hadoop in your environment. Holy shit. It's a little bit cheaper. You should consider going to the East Coast, right? But that's what you have to consider. HR will be your biggest expense. You spend $100,000 on your hardware and software, and you pay $1 million for your people. And then those people might even need training. You need to train the IT users, the system admins, the network, and all the software developers with all this new technology, what will delay your project, right? And you have to train your business users, because your business users, they want to have drill downs. They want to have the same thing they saw with Tableau, but actually Hadoop is batch. So you have to make them understand this is a different thing, right? And then you need to advocate in your organization, hey, this is really cool, we really want to have this. Don't underestimate logistic costs. Very frequently you have to move hardware around between different data center. You know, you get the Dell stuff delivered to your headquarters, it's on a different kind of area. You need to move people. If you distribute teams, it's getting expensive moving people between East and West. And again, I saw it. So put another $50,000 on top of that. And then even worse, data has to travel. Don't underestimate this. If you put, I saw great, you know, they did all the calculations, and then I saw those folks moving data between 2 data centers, and like, what, 50 grand per month? Yeah, it's big data, so consider the data traveling costs. Operations, you need the administration folks, consider cooling. We talked about this. It's a big issue. I have a lot of machines that creating carbon dioxide. Power consumption isn't to be underestimated. Anybody's using ARM processors? Not yet. Okay, we're getting there. You have to maintain the stuff. And then consider the downtime. If this thing goes down, what does it mean for your organization, right? Is it a production environment? Is it just for analytics? And very, very important, because again, that comes back to HR cost. How simple is the whole thing to change? Because if you're building a hardwired Hadoop system, you roll this out to your organization, I promise you within the first 4 weeks, your business users come back and say, can you do a different join there? What means you go back to your Hive, change the schema, and you start your whole development process from scratch. So timeline from my experience, you need, so you make your decision, you identify all this good stuff, right? You need at least 1.5 months to just get all the stuff together. Don't underestimate buying the hardware. The biggest problem, by the way, is not calling IBM, HP, and Dell to buy the hardware, and then they need 4 weeks to deliver. The biggest problem is to find that one guy in your organization that takes it out of the boxes and screws it into the data center. Seriously, I saw those machines. We have a customer, they bought our software. After something like 4 months, the machines are still not in the data center. You need to consider build, again, at least a year with a team, my experience, versus buy, right? Buy something. Again, there's a few choices. Our company is one of them. We are obviously save a lot of time to not develop this, and we will double click on this. Then again, data acquisition. Also here, you wait the longest for the LDAP password or for the Oracle password, or like get this guy actually giving you data. Then you will spend time on analytics, right? Really, if you have the system built up with your Hive schemas or your Datamere stuff, and then you have to analyze all those kind of stuff. And then most important, all of this is not worth anything if you not act on the insights you extract. If you want to bring your organization any value, you need to align the business users that maybe change the marketing strategy or change whatever it needs to do based on those insights. If you're just building a nice system that creates some data reports on a daily basis that nobody cares, you will fail. Very, very important. I saw that many times. IT builds a big data strategy. Business users are like, huh, we have Hadoop? Oh, I didn't know that. oh, we have this insight? Oh, I didn't know it. So really get them aligned from the very beginning. Okay. Very, very important. We talked a little bit about this. And now here's where you have to really consider, is it worth to go to Hadoop? We now saw it's expensive, okay? And now we maybe all ask, why would I even do that? If I pay $200,000 for my favorite database and maybe $50,000 for my favorite BI tool, why would I even go to Hadoop? Well, Hadoop has a unique opportunity to change your organization. And what it brings to the table is faster time to insight. And right, I said time now is kind of the currency for a lot of companies. So here's what we used to do with traditional MPP databases or even single RDBMSs. We used to have an ETL process. Who knows what ETL means? Extract, transform, and load, yes. So if data is the new oil, what you do is you split the oil, right, into something, let's say plastic, and then you melt it into a static schema. Hey, this is so 19th century manufacturing process, right? That's like Henry Ford. So you're highly efficient with your database queries, but it took you a lot of time and you're very static. You can only produce that single car. The problem of database schemas is that you design it today with knowledge from yesterday, and you hope it's good enough for tomorrow. Anybody yet predicted the future in this room? Let me know, I would like to hire you. The problem is we design schemas today that do not hold up with our business, and even worse, we put business intelligence on top of that. We basically just cemented our company to not be able to innovate and move. Now here's what Hadoop is, right? If this is kind of the old Henry Ford manufacturing process where I design one car, then I build a factory, and the factory is highly efficient, but static, and as soon as the gas prices change, I have to build a new factory, if that's the kind of the metaphor here. This is the new 3D printing, or kind of, sometimes I say Toyota approach. But hey, it's anyhow. Call it whatever car factory you like approach. Sometimes think about it as like 3D printing. Instead of splitting and building the raw material, we take the raw material and we put it in Hadoop. And the way to think about Hadoop is Moore's law, right? Every 18 months hardware capacity doubles. Moore's law multiplied by the number of machines in your cluster. And if you think about Moore's law, it brought you the iPad. A 4-year-old now can use computing. Couldn't do it with Linux or DOS, right, or mainframe. But now on an iPad, a 4-year-old can do computing, and exactly this is what Hadoop brings to the table. It completely changes the user experience. We now can do things very, very simple. We just take the raw data. We do not have to build schemas. We do not have to spend 3 months or 6 months to discuss in our organization what's the perfect schema. We take the raw data, and now what we can do is we create a view on the data, because we have virtually unlimited storage and compute. So we have the raw data, we create an IT view, we create a marketing view, we create a sales view, and if I create another view tomorrow, it's no problem. I do not need to change the schema, I do not need to update ETL, I do not need to update BI. Is that making sense? That is one of the biggest, if not the single one benefit of Hadoop. Unlimited storage and compute, Moore's law, that allows you to completely change how you do data analytics. So if you do SQL on Hadoop, I personally believe, and I had a few years of experience here, because you spend so much money on HR, you will not have any return of investment. Leave your Oracle where it is. If you think Hadoop will make that cheaper, you're wrong. You will spend more time in HR, integration, all those kind of things, instead of saving on, because it sounds like a cheap open source system. It's not. But if time to insight is your measurement and agility is what you're looking for to build maybe to make a data-driven or build up a data-driven organization, here's your opportunity. And it's unique. We have companies that within 3 days now can optimize prices. We have companies that within less than an hour can react to cybersecurity attacks that coming up in Europe, moving over Russia, attacking Windows 7 in the US. They can see it much faster. They do not need to model and do all of this. The time to insight is extremely small. Okay, I have to rush. I might be 2 minutes over. It's okay. All right, build versus buy. So if you have to decide if you buy a Hadoop analytical solutions like the one we're selling, and there are other companies that do this as well. Of course, I would say I was the best, but first think about what are you looking for, right? So define your decision criteria. Then qualify what you want to do, right? So if you're considering build versus buy, what's important for our organization? Do we want to build a reporting tool that is static? Hey, build might be the better way. Or we want to build kind of a data discovery platform? Buy might be the better way. So then validate before you go there. Validate your conclusions and then decide to build versus buy. But just as an idea, it's a very complex process. If you want to build, you have to hire a team. You most likely have to train those people. And then you sit a half year in an IT project and create an architecture. Then you have to develop the whole thing. And by the way, you need a development environment, so that's even more cost. Then you will have to QA and test the whole thing. Then you deploy it. By the way, you need multiple instances. If you write it yourself, you have a test cluster, you have a staging cluster, you have a production cluster, and then you have an analytics cluster where you actually run the whole thing. And this is all painful, and it slows you down even more. And you go back if a business user changed something, and then eventually you can say, okay, now this is what I want to analyze, and then you get there. Okay, again, this is why it's a whole year. All right, so if you want to build something, you need kind of the standards thing we talked about before. You need the Unix system, a GVM, a Hadoop distro, most likely metadata database. MySQL will do it, the monitoring tool. But then you have to build a data loading thing, Scoop, for example. You have to build a data parser, a data analytics kind of framework. That's so nice. All come in if you want to all hear about ROIs. No. I wonder who's next. Justin Bieber, right? Okay, you have to build data visualization. You will have to build a scheduler, dependency management, data syncing, and a monitoring API, or the monitoring API, the management user interface security integration, or you can build this. But keep in mind, all of this you actually have to code because it is not there. You have to code it from scratch. It will take you a lot of time. So now, if you come into really calculating the return of investment, I need 1 more minute. Okay, thank you. I started late too. Hardware savings, software savings, they are minimal. Where you really want to look into is your productivity gains. This is where Hadoop excels. This is where you really will make yourself the hero in your organization. And again, the business benefits, therefore. And then what you want to do is measure them for the first project, the second project, the third project, and you actually want to create a waterfall ROI. You want to measure your ROI on a monthly basis. You start with estimating, then you measure on a monthly basis, and then you actually capture them and update your model because the ROI the first months might be completely different than after 12 months. And do that, even if you're a software engineer, because you maybe accelerate your career since you're the big picture guy, and you can go back to a CEO and say, you know, actually we made 20 million more with this. All right, so do it on a monthly basis. Sell it internally, I will jump over this slide, just, sell it. So we have a spreadsheet, we're a spreadsheet company, we have a spreadsheet. Spreadsheet user interface for Hadoop and one for the ROI that you can download here or sign up and then we send it to you, where all of those things I just discussed are in and you can fill them out. There's a few default values in there. You can play around with this. So you have actually a tool that you can go to your boss with. And the 3 main takeaways. Again, you need, if you want to push for a big data project, you need to calculate the ROI because you're very fast running into the open knife, spending millions of dollars on Hadoop, but pitching a low-cost open source Hadoop framework. HR is the biggest expense, so considering buying stuff, it will be most likely cheaper. Or be very careful. And if you focus on IT savings, you will have the smallest return of investment. The agility and the whole concept of schema on read will be your main benefit, the time to insight. And again, this is the biggest ROI. Okay, well that's it. Thank you very much. I'll leave you with a little joke here.